Well, welcome to Bob Fraser. Bob, a stellar career both on and off the water, and off the water with your sailmaking, but we'll come to that a bit later. Member of the CYC since 1973. How did you get involved in sailing?
Um, well, I got involved in a pretty young age. My father designed and built a couple of small yachts, and our family yacht was launched when I was about 2 years old. So over those years, my dad taught me how to sail with the yacht, and then I moved into VJs and Moss from Lane Coast Skiff Club. And later on, in my early teens, I went back and did a bit of sailing with my dad out of Sydney Animal Sailing Club. And then I had a bit of a break from sailing, and I followed some other interests. But when I was about 20, I got a keen interest again, and I went out and bought a Flying Dutchman, which was a 20-foot Olympic class at the time. So we raced that, we did a few of the national championships and raced out of Wallara Sailing Club. And as a matter of fact, that's when I learned about the CYC, because the CYC ran, during the winter series, ran races for the boats out of Wallara Sailing Club. So I ended up selling that boat to help me fund my start-up sailmaking business.
Right. Well, you competed in 28, you'll have competed in 28 Sydney Hobart races. The first race was in 1973 aboard Astalot, Little Vanderstadt boat. But we move on a few years I'll take you to 1979, when you were part of a very successful team aboard Deception, owned by a former Commodore here, John Bleakley.
Yeah.
Competed in the Hobart Race and the Southern Cross Cup. Tell us about that experience. Must have been terrific.
Oh, it was terrific. It was a, we had a terrific year with that boat. See, it started when I bumped into Steve Colmar, and he told me that John Bleakley had bought the boat, and there's a guy he mentioned was Bainey, Graham Richardson. John had asked him to put a crew together, so he invited Steve to join the boat. And Steve says, "Why don't you come and join us? We need a sailmaker and it'd be great to have you on board." So he said, "Give Bainey a call." So called up Bainey and became part of the crew. We got the sail order for the complete sail order for the boat, and Ron Jacobs joined us. I did the half-ton worlds with Ron in 1977. He later on he worked for our sailor for quite a period of time, so I'm not sure if he was with our loft then, but he joined us on the boat. And Mike Fletcher sailed the sister ship. The Deception was a 37-foot fractional rig Peterson design, and Mike sailed the sister ship Relentless. So we had a pretty hot summer. Between the two boats, we won most of the races during the summer period there. And this led into the Sydney Hobart Race and into the Southern Cross Cup. We both were members in the Southern Cross Cup. From memory, he finished second boat overall, we finished third boat overall, and we won the Southern Cross Cup. The Hobart Race was a bit of a non-event, because that year first 10 places were filled by half-tonners. We had a bit of a drifting match before we ran a Tasman Light, and they all came in with a bruise. So, but we won the Southern Cross Cup.
And you beat a very strong UK United Kingdom team.
Yeah.
Blizzard and Marionette and Yeoman out, and they were pretty powerful boats and well sailboats. So it was a pretty good victory.
I think they might have been, from memory, part of the Admirals Cup team that year or the year before.
That's right.
So, but it was interesting because they were all masthead rigs, and the trend was going towards fractional rigs. So we, and it's just coming to my mind now when we finished. Smackwater Jack finished fourth. She was a Paul Whiting designed, sailing for the New Zealand team. Yeah. And when we finished and came into Constitution Dock, we were rafted up with them. And it was a bit of a tragedy, because we went on board their boat and I met his wife and his crew and so forth. And the thing that came to my attention, that the deck was like paper mache. And they pointed out to me where one of the winches had just marched down the deck. And regrettably, we didn't see them again. No. Paul and his wife and
Sailing
been
back
lost
to
on the
New
way back to
Zealand,
New
never
Zealand.
seen. Yeah, very tragic.
Yeah.
But although we'll come to it a bit later, I mean, you made the sails. You were making the sails.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the
Well,
boats, yeah.
so we did the sails for Deception, and Mike, he had the Ostrom loft, so he did the sails for Relentless.
Yeah.
But between the two boats, we had a good, relationship, so
Yeah.
we got the best out of both boats.
Well, I'll move you on a year, and the Kenwood Clipper Cup series in Hawaii, which we all love to go to.
Yeah.
Lovely place, good breezes, good boats. You competed in 1980 on a little boat called Gold Coast Express.
Yeah.
How'd that come about?
Well, Gold Coast Express was built by a syndicate at Southport Yacht Club, and I was invited to quote on doing the sails. I think actually they told me that Jim Hardy might have put my name in the hat there after what he'd seen what we did with Deception. So I went and saw them, and they said, well, we'd like to go with you if you would come to Hawaii with us. So I had a bit of trouble refusing that offer. It was a lift keel, a Davidson 37 lift keeler, and the interesting story, they actually did a deal with, sand used to be shipped from Stradbroke Island to Waikiki Beach, and they did a deal with the company there to put the boat on the sand barge, so they lifted the keel and buried it in the sand, and that's how I got to
Took
Hawaii.
a slow trip to Hawaii, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I guess they had plenty of time.
Yeah.
So when I got to Hawaii, they came and met me at the airport, and they said, "Oh, we got this guy. His name's Albie Bergen, and he's been out with us and training us up. And do you know him?" And I said, Albie. I said, Albie's a legend. He owned this boat Rival, which was a masthead rig boat that won the Hobart, I think, in 1961. I said, I haven't met him, but I know about him for sure. So we get down to the boat. We're going to go out for a sail that afternoon, and so he had them all organised.
Have his pith helmet on?
He had his pith helmet on.
Good.
And it's interesting you raise that, because I found Albie had an interesting sense of dress, because when we went to do the round the state race, which is about 800 miles, he wore the long john underwear all the way with the pith helmet. Being a masthead rig man, he had the boat reefed to the hounds. So he wanted the jib and the main to sort of match at the top there. So I said, I think we do this another way, Albie. He says, how's that? And I said, oh, well, we'll throw out the roof and let's see. So we threw out the roofs and off he went. And he went, oh, geez, it's going now. So he said, I got a good idea. Why don't you run the boat and I'll do the navigating?
But you had great success.
Yeah, well, we actually went on and won every race in class. So it was a pretty good outcome. Yeah.
And then next year, another Southern Cross, and you were captain of the New South Wales team aboard Smuggler, Trevor Simpson's little Dubois boat.
Yeah.
Another good little boat.
Yeah, it was a terrific boat.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting because on the first night out, we had a bit of an issue because in the small hours of the morning when the instruments start flashing, and we realised we had a bit of a power problem. So we went to start it up and charged up the batteries, and we learnt that it had been wired up in parallel, so there wasn't a separate battery to start the engine. So from that point on, we had no power. So we had no radio, no instruments. So we had the DR all the way to Tasman Light, and Steve Colmar was with us, and Steve and I shared the steering. And what we did was we carefully mapped our direction, hour by hour, and we had a competition running on the boat to guess what speed we were going at. So we logged all this. Tony Shaw was the navigator. We logged all this, and then halfway across Bass Strait, we saw the yacht Bimble Gumby a couple of miles behind us. So
Keith Jacobs out of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
There's a story in itself, but we'll leave that.
We could tell that story sometime too. So we threw off the sheets and waited for him to catch up and asked him to report our position, which he duly did. Can't do that these days.
No.
So then, as we got further into it down the coast, we said to Shorey, we don't want to overstand Tasman Light, and we don't want to make a landing early because it gets pretty light in on the shore, so we want to hit it right on on the button there, and he said, okay, well, I can only do my best. I've been dead reckoning for about 400 miles. So we're sailing in that night, and the fog started to roll in, and there's a fair bit of tension on board, and a few stories told, just to keep everybody calm. But then out of the fog, we saw a little flicker of light, and we hit it right in the button.
You nailed it.
Rounded the light, up the river, won our class, won the Class B in the Hobart Race, and end up top scoring boat at the Southern Cross Cup.
Well, I'll take you to the next year, which you probably don't need reminding of, that you sailed on an Audacity and a little Van der Stat boat, and second overall, and still remains the smallest losing margin in history of the Hobart Race.
That's right.
1 minute 46 seconds.
Bit of a tragedy, really.
Do you still wake up every day thinking about it?
No, that one doesn't concern me. A couple of others do, but that one doesn't concern me because we did everything we could in that race. We started in the southerly, and then the breeze, turned east, and then it turned to the north, and it blew from the north all the way down the coast and right across Bass Strait, and it built and built and built. And so we pushed the boat pretty hard. I can actually recall probably 4 or 5 Chinese jibes. So down she'd go, we'd pick it up, off we'd go again. And by the time we got to Tasman Light, we thought we had it shot to bits. So round Cape Row, up into the Storm Bay, up into the river, and we were becalmed during the small hours of the morning, and we sat there. And finally we got the morning breeze and crossed the finishing line. And I remember quite clearly when we got the sails down and motored in the Constitution dock, somebody yelled out, "Bad luck, mate, you missed it by about a minute." So
just throw him in the water, that bloke.
Yeah, well, I couldn't identify amongst all the people, but so as it turns out, we missed by a minute 40 something, and looking back on it, the spinning pole on that boat was cut 1 inch too long, and the spinning pole, as you know, comes into your rating along with your J measurement.
Yeah.
And that 1 inch on that spinning pole is the difference between winning and losing the race.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So the next year, 83, you're off to the first of your 4 Admirals Cups. Admirals Cup no longer held, sadly. They were great regattas, weren't they?
Oh, they were fabulous. I mean, the Admirals Cup was like the World Championship of ocean racing, and Australia had been quite successful there in earlier days. So that was 1983, I did my first Admirals Cup. I know you were with us. And I think we had about, I seem to recall we had about 21 countries represented, so we had 3 boats in each team. So there you got like 60-something boats competing in this championship. And I did another one in 87 on Sagacious. I can't quite recall how we ended up there. If we won it, I'd remember.
We're third overall.
The third overall?
Third team, yeah.
Yeah.
Out of 19 teams, which is...
Yeah. So it was pretty good effort.
It was hard going, yeah.
And then you might remember we did one in 1993, and regrettably we lost to Germany by 1/4 point.
Yeah. I still wake up thinking about that. Don't worry.
So you can find 1/4 point.
Yeah, I'm sure we could.
But they were
great
fabulous
fun,
events.
weren't they? Yeah.
It's pretty disappointing we don't see them anymore, along with the Kenwood Cup or Clipper Cup. And you're looking back on that, and I think about the Kenwood Cup, and quite a few people have said we need to, how do we have a reenactment, how to get it started again. But I think it gets down to sponsors too, well, particularly in the Kenwood Cup. Kenwood pulled out as the sponsor, and so you need to have an event to be able to go to. And I guess the Admirals Cup, hard going for like Australia and New Zealand having to ship 3 boats.
Financially.
All the financial restrictions. Yeah.
But I'll move you on now to a couple of colourful owners. First being Rod Muir with Windward Passage. A few stories there. Firstly, the old Windward Passage, and then he built the new Windward Passage.
That's right. Yeah.
And you were involved with both?
Yeah. So I was invited to sail on the, I don't call it old, I call it the original.
Yeah.
The original Windward Passage, which was just a beautiful boat, built on the beach in Bahamas or Bermuda or
Somewhere
somewhere
at
there.
Bahamas,
Yeah,
I
beautiful
think.
boat. So I was aboard the sail on that in 1986. So I spent most of the summer doing that. We did the Hobart Race. We finished second across the line. And while we did that, Rod had commissioned a build for a new Maxi boat, which was a Fraser design and built by McConaughey's. So the year later, that boat was launched, and we did the sails for it along with North Sails. And the first head out was in Hawaii. We went over there for the Kenwood Cup and the Maxi World Championship. So we had about 12 Maxi boats competing in the Maxi Worlds. And so Grant sailed as tactician. During the Rod did the starts, and I steered the short races. So there was an interesting banter on that boat between the two sail offs, but it was a pretty good fit really, and we had a really successful time. We won.
Is it true the opposition sent up a helicopter to photograph your sails?
Yeah. Well, our main competitor was Umara, which was the same design, and it was sailed by Paul Kayart skippered it, Ian Murray, I think was tactician, Paul Westlake and some of those guys were part of it. And so at the end of the regatta, I was told they'd send a helicopter up and photographed our sails. And by the time we got to San Francisco for the big boat, they'd done some massive sail recuts and actually beat us in San Francisco, and we finished second to them.
Well, that's a nice compliment.
Yeah.
But then the boat, you had to withdraw from a Hobart race, didn't you? The deck
Yeah. So I came back to do the 98 race, and again...
no, not 98, it'd be 88.
I beg your pardon, 88.
Yeah.
The 88 race, and I think the sail number was 1988, so I should have remembered that. So I came back to do the 88 race, and I think it was the first night, the first or second night. It was pretty rough, and I was down below off watching. We fell off a wave, and there was a huge crack, which was that sort of carbon fibre breaking sort of noise. And I was watching the boys going up and down inside the boat with headlamps trying to find where the crack was, and couldn't find it. Then I came up to do my stint on steering, and we're in slightly flatter water then, and we were sailing out and starboard tack, and I looked down at the compass on the deck, and I saw a split had run from the gunnel through the compass,
Into the
across the edge of the cockpit, and we were starting to head down there. So it was like,
time to come home.
well, threw the sails off, and we were contemplating the situation, and we had, Graham Freeman, of course, he ran the boat, and Freeman and Tony Herder was on board, who was an architect in the shipwright, and these guys looked at it and they said, geez, there's nothing we can do. And I said, come on, I'm going to do something. Can't we pull up the floorboards and bolt it over the top? And he said, the floorboards are all made out of Nomex, so we're not going to go too far there. So anyway, we came home, and we came into A Marina, or B Marina, the second marina there. We came in there late in the night, and the media are all the way down the marina with big floodlights out on the filmers coming in and ready to interview Rod. And I don't think Rod was in any mood for having a chat, so he was off throwing his hands in the air, and that was the end of, that's the last time that the boat was ever sailed by Rod, and the end of his sailing career really.
Yeah.
Which was a great shame, because Rod was a great guy. I mean, he had before the two passages, he had the Doctor Who, and he was great for sailing, and he certainly knew how to have fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll move you on to another colourful owner, Canberra George Snow.
Oh yeah,
The Brindabella.
Yeah,
A lot of fun with George on and off of the water.
yeah. Well, I met George when he was part of the crew, Far 40 crew, Nadia from Canberra Yacht Club with Techie Dalton, and so following on from that, he bought the Doctor Who from Rod Muir, and he asked us to make the sails for that, so we made the sails for Doctor Who, and then that led into making the sails for the Fast 65, his first Brindabella.
And line honours in 91 on Brindabella. First
Yeah.
Brindabella,
Yeah.
That was a bit of fun as
Yeah.
well.
So while He only had that boat for a couple of years, and then it became Maserati, I think. But while he had that, he commissioned a new Judson 80-footer.
He had good success with that. I mean, line honours again in '97, and second to New Zealand. What was it called? Tasmania in
Tasmania,
in the 50th race, which was a close battle, wasn't it?
We had a few too many seconds, and on that one, that one does disappoint me because that was the former New Zealand Endeavour, the wet red boat, and big reaching boat. And in that race, they put about 17 miles on us. And then we caught them back, and we were in Storm Bay, and I looked out and I saw the starboard light out there, and I said, that's not a fishing boat, that's New Zealand Endeavour. So we had a discussion about that, and we were nearly laying through to the Iron Pot, but it was felt that we should go out and cover them. And a decision was made on board to go out and cover them. So we went out there, got to the ley line, tacked in front of them, below them. We're in about 35 knots of wind with the number 4 up, and the winches weren't locked in. The strop on the number 4 broke, and the sail came down, jammed in a fall, and wouldn't go down, and they rolled us and beat us home by about 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's tough.
50th Hobart.
Yes, well, that's another story, isn't it, sadly? But I'd take you back to '92 when finally you won a Hobart race on Assassin, corrected time.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Big thrill, winning a big race.
Yeah, well, that was the first year that IMS, the winner was IMS. And,
And a good crew with that, with Robin Crawford, the late Robin Crawford.
Yeah, it's tragic. Yeah, we had a really good crew. Bucko and, our closest rival was Morning Mist 3, which was a FAR 50. So this boat was a FAR 40.
Yeah.
And Morning Mist was a FAR 50, but from memory, we beat them in every race, so it was a good outcome.
Yeah. Well, Bob, as I said earlier, it's been a wonderful career on the water. Just quickly, how do you see ocean racing now? Where do you see it at with these modern boats, canting keels, push-button winches?
I'm not sure about the push-button winches, but I think the modern boats are terrific. I've been doing a bit of sailing on the Quest, and those CP52s are terrific, fairly brutal. But they're terrific boats. Yeah, the canting keel and that. I mean, we've got to move forward, don't we? And I like the concept. But before we finish up on that, I'd just like to tell you about the highlight of my life, my sailing career, was when we won on Brindabella. Sue had come down and she was on the dock and brought my father down. And my father had taught me sailing, so we went out there. And we did the King of the Derwent race.
Is this on the
This is on the Brindabella.
Which Brindabella though?
The Brindabella 2, the big one.
The Scott Judson boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. 1997.
Yeah.
So my father was on the dock there with the push of all the people and that. So we invited him out to do the King of the Derwent, and I said to George, "Can my dad have a steer?" And he goes, "Yeah, why not?" Yeah. So he took over the helm. Hadn't sailed a boat in 50 years, and he steered the last boat. Didn't know what the telltales were, never looked at the instruments. And so for the man who taught me sailing, hadn't sailed for 50 years, the biggest boat he'd sailed was a 28-footer. It was
lovely.
pretty remarkable.
That completed the circle. Lovely. Terrific.